Hello and welcome to the Wonder Women podcast. My name is Katie Freeman and I'm your host. Every Wednesday and Friday, I bring you an interview of a female or non-binary maker of all kinds from all over the world. And today's guest is Camille of Remodel Your Life Podcast, in addition to so much more. Camille really has a background in construction, which took her into designing, redesigning, building out kitchens, and then getting into teaching, and just really so much that I know I'm not going to do her justice. I will warn you though, especially if you're listening to the podcast with littles around, today's language gets salty in a few spots. So if that is something that you don't want your littles to hear, just know that this is one you'll want to come back to. It is definitely a must listen. Just know that that's out there. All right, before we hop into the episode though with Camille, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the patrons over on Patreon. So thank you so much, Kevin, Lefty's Woodshop, Christy, Twisted Twine, Christina B, Jeremy Speece, Sammy, Go Sammy Lee, Sven, Dwarf Size Workshop, Rachel, Moody Makes, Bonnie, toolmomstore.com, Laura, Oakley Soap Company, Mary Lou, Made by Mary Lou, Amy, Bison Valley Carving, Dan and Kelly, Reclaim Living Store, Brandy, Studio Obey, Kathy, One Girl and Her Tools, Ellen, Little Bear Furniture, and Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you all so very much for your ongoing and continued support, helping me to produce 2 podcast episodes a week, every week. And with no further ado, here is Camille. I have my guests introduce themselves. So when you're ready, you can go ahead and do that.
Hey guys, I'm Camille Finan, and I'm a kitchen cabinet maker, / woodworker for many years. And I have a podcast called Remodel Your Life that helps women learn about all the different amazing women around the world who do woodworking or skilled crafts. And I also sort of help women on the back end with, building their own little courses or improving their own woodworking businesses.
Awesome. That is a lot of stuff to do for one person.
Yeah, not all at the same time.
Right. All right. Well, I want to know your story. So let's start at beginning, kind of childhood and
where
all the way back, how you got to where you are today.
Well, that's 51 years. So that might take a while. I don't know what the timing is here, but so I'm Northern California born. I'm a Norwegian from Minnesota, but my parents came here and basically had me within almost the first 7 months. My mom was pregnant. So 100% Norwegian, both sides of my family. And when I did Ancestry, it literally was 0.000001 something else. They said they've never found someone with nothing else in it. Anyway, so my parents are, from Norway, eventually then Minnesota, then California, which was a big difference culturally. And so I was born in the 70s and grew up in Northern California and ran around, chasing my dad, who was a contractor and a cabinet maker. And he was basically our babysitter. So we were, in dresses on job sites when we were, 3 years old. And so that was my first baby job, was sweeping up sawdust, literally, and, opening beer cans for my dad, because that was the 70s. So then my dad left in high school and remarried a different person. And so that was kind of traumatic for many years. And so I didn't really do anything. I had grown up sort of building with him and crafts. And I think I did my first like little candlestick, like wood turning candlestick when I was like 7 and sold them to the little local craft store, like little home furnishing store. I don't even know how that happened, but I'm pretty sure my dad was 90% of that. So you could technically say I started my first baby business then. And then in high school, didn't do well in high school because, I was grieving my dad leaving. So I kind of basically tanked and didn't do well in school. And so didn't really know what I was going to do after high school because my grades were crap. And so kind of had to work my way back up from there and go to community college. Took a long time, but eventually I got good at school and got into college and thought I was going to do business development stuff, and because I liked making money in business. And so graduated with 2 bachelors and an MBA. So I know that's a big difference, but it was a long time coming. I think it was about 13 years. And so when people say like they went to college for 4 years or 5 and it took a long time, I'm like, no, I took a long time going to college. And so I did that and was really successful at it, but still kind of not really very creatively fulfilled. And I was making a lot of money and I was helping students and stuff. By then they'd asked me to be a teacher. So I kind of went from college to teaching like basically immediately, and was teaching business courses, and which basically just means lots and lots of business plans is basically what you do. And I did that for a couple of years and just really burnt out on it, and kind of had like a nervous breakdown, not like a full nervous breakdown, but I just really, really burnt out. And that was my first bout with depression. And so I was, suicidal. And that's when I sort of learned that you can really push yourself to a limit instead of noticing the signs. And so that's when I basically gave all of that up, which seems crazy. I let go all of that stuff. I shut down that business. I got rid of all my clients. I stopped teaching. I basically just gave up all of that and just floundered for like a year, basically just whining and complaining and being mad at the world and not sure what I'm going to do. And in the background, I was with that business because it made money. I was taking that money and remodeling houses. And that was my mental break, right? That was probably the only thing that really got me through, was that I had bought my first house at 18 and I had remodeled it. It was just a shit house. So don't think anybody, it was a very expensive house. It was not. It was a cracked in that like I bought on a foreclosure. I think I paid like $63,000 for it with a little mortgage. I mean, I think my mortgage was $200 a month or something, but I remodeled it and I sold it to the neighbor in the same little crappy neighborhood, right? and so I loved that though. I really loved that. And so I took that little bit of money and I rolled it over into a couple of other properties. And so in the background with that business development sort of degree, I was basically doing carpentry, right? I was doing the stuff that I had done with my dad. And so it healed a lot of stuff for me. It really made me feel like closer to him because I hadn't seen him in like 15 years. So that process is really what saved me. I say carpentry saved my life because it literally did. Like, I don't think I would be here if I hadn't had that, if I hadn't had that resource or salve or whatever you want to call it, like to go to, when I shut down all the other stuff, I don't know what I would have done, honestly. So as you can tell, it still makes me emotional. So that was sort of the little spark for me. And once I did that, I decided, well, maybe I could do this as a real job. And everybody thought I was nuts, right? Because I had all these other things I had been working for so long. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. We've had other careers or things we put a lot of time and money into or energy, and we just want something else, right? It's just not working. So that took a long time for me to really face the fact that I was never going to be happy with sitting behind a desk, right? That was just never going to do it for me. And so that my next step was kind of another ridiculous thing to do, but I didn't really know how to break into the industry, right? I didn't have any connections. I didn't know my dad then, we weren't close. I didn't have friends or a brother or anybody to get into it. I was tiny. I was, half the size I am now. Because I'm more, I'm chubbier than I was then. I was tiny. I was like 5'3", 95 pounds. I looked 12. I looked so young. And so I just decided to break sort of my biggest fear and just walk onto a job site and ask for a job. And so that was sort of what I did. And it was like 100 degrees. It gets very hot here. It was, just a bunch of Mexican guys working on the job site. Nobody spoke English. It was like probably the worst job to walk into. But this foreman was white. He spoke English, and he had me digging ditches the very next morning. And that I got through that first day, sweaty and tired and hot and miserable, but I was like the happiest I'd ever been. Like when I went home that night, I slept, and it kind of cured my depression. Like it just, from then on, it was just, I got better and better. And then I eventually joined the Carpenters Union and improved my skills. And then in the union, I kind of found kitchens. I sort of found cabinet making. I found fine finishes. I found spray booths and granite fabrication, basically all the little steps of a kitchen. And so I ended up just gravitating towards kitchens because it's kind of like a little world, right? You get to do, there's like 15 different trades in one room. And I like a lot of variety. So it kind of let me do a lot of different kinds of things in one room, right? So that's sort of very long roundabout way to kitchens.
Uh-huh.
And then I built from there. I had planned to actually stay in the union or work for a contractor. I would have probably been happy doing that. But I kept finding myself getting held back, right? I would work for 7 or 8 months or 9 months, or, a year was a long time. And you're doing a lot of work. Like you learn a lot in a year, right? And I found that I was kept getting passed over. They kept giving the jobs to the other guys who had come in way, had way less experience, and I was doing the work, and that just kept happening. So I kind of kept moving and moving and moving. And every time I would hit like a roadblock, I would just find another company, and I would take what I knew and I'd skip over to another company. And this is in the union, right? Because you can, you have to find your own work in the union. And then eventually I got to where I knew all the pieces. Like there was no reason for me to stay there, at 37 an hour or whatever it was I was making as a journeyman. When I knew I could do better because of my business background. I knew the potential for kitchens, right? In California where I live. So I left that and started my own kitchen remodeling company. And so then that's what I did for 25 years. So, awesome. And it feels like those things overlap because I was doing a lot of those things simultaneously.
Right.
Which I know. So I told you it was a long answer.
That's okay. That's okay. And first I want to go back and just touch on, I know you're not alone in the sense of like creating with your hands and that like creative side, like literally saved your life, because I'm very much in the same boat. I had really bad postpartum depression after my second was born. And so it was a matter of like starting to make in order to like get past that and to find myself again. Like that was so, and I still say I'm very grumpy if I don't get into the shop for a while. Like I am very grumpy person to be around.
So now I'm retired, right? Which we haven't touched on. But I still do stuff all the time. Like I did a kitchen last week. But if I go about 2 weeks and I haven't done anything, like this weekend, I rebuilt my fence, right? And the neighbors are like, "What's going on? Are you doing that whole thing by yourself?" And I was like, "Yes, I need this. Like they're like, "Wow, we had like 8 Mexican guys out doing this whole job right before." And I'm like, no, I want to do all the pieces. So, so I'm the same way. I just have that like itch that has to be scratched for me.
Yeah, exactly. So I do want to spend a little time talking about too, like, and you kind of hit on it a little bit. Like, I would assume you were frequently the only female on the job site.
Always the only female. Yeah, I'm not sure how old you are, but 51. There was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, there was barely the internet, right? There was AOL, okay? There was dial-up. There was no way to connect with other women. Like they're just, I mean, I know there are women that went to conferences and stuff like that, but for many of us that just did nothing but work, like I couldn't get time off. I couldn't afford to go to those things. There was no, unless you just randomly ran across some girl like at a job site, which I mean, literally years went by. I never saw another girl doing anything, much less cabinet making, much less. I mean, that came way later, towards the end of that career was sort of, I heard, I think there's some girl that maybe down south, I think she kind of does what you do, but I'm not really sure, right? So I never actually met anybody my whole life. Yeah, we were far, far, far and few between. I think when I went through my apprenticeship training, there was 3 of us in the that training course of whatever 30 people, and I was the only one that made it. One girl shot herself with a nail gun. The other girl cracked because of she just couldn't take the comments and stuff, and I just didn't give a fuck. Like I just was like, whatever. Like I'm here to make money. It's not personal, right? So yeah, it was a very lonely career in that sense. Luckily, I was able to. I don't know if it was just intuition or just my sheer stubbornness, but I always made it a point to find a guy that was an ally on the job site, like as soon as I could. And typically that was like the most experienced person, which kind of worked out because that's the guy I wanted to hang out next to anyways. I didn't want to hang out next to the guys that were idiots, that didn't know anything, that were stupid, that were just like, there's plenty of people like that are just kind of, I mean, they're barely pushing the broom, like barely pushing that broom, right? So I gravitated towards the people that were really excellent at what they did. And those guys were very kind to me and they took really good care of me. So they definitely protected me and they looked out for me and they gave me jobs and they really helped build my career.
Do you think it was a fact of like experience could see experience or talent? And so it was like you gained respect because you could show up.
I think you're right. I think it's what you bring to the job, honestly. I think nobody wants to spend their time or energy, myself included, right, on someone that you don't think is going to actually do anything with it. Like, right, because you have lots of apprentices, right? There's hundreds of apprentices. They've seen it all before. And they want to pass on their knowledge. If they're generous people, they want to share their knowledge with someone that's going to appreciate it and do something with it, that really likes it. So I think the people that I see struggle in the trades are not very they don't come across as very ambitious, honestly. They kind of expect things to happen for them, and which I know might sound harsh, but most of the times what I've seen is if you show up and you look like you really want to help and do stuff, even when there's cases I didn't know anything about what was going on, but I was ambitious, right? I was actively trying to learn. And typically those people will get snatched up faster and they'll be brought under somebody's wing because you're kind of doing your half of the equation, right? You're not just like, hey, I'm here, everybody help me be better. Like, so I saw a lot of that. I still see that. I mean, I still go and do trainings at the union and I can just look at a group of 20 women and I can just tell right away the 2 women that are going to make it. Like, honestly. And it's not that they're not all nice or that they couldn't all do it eventually. It's just the trades have a way of filtering people out really quickly. And that includes men too, right? Like the guy that's barely pushing the broom is going to still be barely pushing that broom 20 years later. He's not going to move up and continue making more money or getting more skills, right? A lot of it is predicated on what he's doing.
Hey makers, I want to tell you a little bit about today's episode's sponsor, Athena Outfitters. So when I'm in the market for a new pair of work boots, I do a ton of research, make sure I'm getting something that's going to fit right and going to last. Well, Athena Outfitters is a quality workwear brand for hardworking women that has a tons of experience with footwear. They've taken the time to select the very best shoes and boots made by each of the most reliable footwear brands. And when I shop at Athena Outfitters' site, it saves me time and energy because I trust that they found the best shoes for every job and activity. Plus bonus, you can shop online. So next time you need new work boots or some other type of high performance shoe, check out AthenaOutfitters.com, gear with grit. And Athena is ATHENA, and then outfitters.com. You can also get a special discount at checkout by using the coupon code MM, that's capital M 15 for 15% off any purchase, just because you're a listener of the podcast. All right, let's hop back into the episode. Do you, if you're teaching at the union, if you're working with like a group of women, I mean, are you giving them a dose of reality of like, in addition to outside of like the technical skills, right? There's just more that I would imagine, being that I've been in groups of men too, that you just have to
I try.
put up with, I guess.
Yeah, it's a really touchy subject. I think the trades are changing a lot right now. And so I wouldn't say I'm that old. I mean, I'm not 80, right? I'm young enough to be able to see how, yes, certain things just shouldn't be the way they are, but I'm also old enough to know the reality that you win better by just being successful. And so again, that may not be a popular opinion. I know a lot of women really want things to just be a certain way and be 100%. Everything is always going to work out perfectly, but I'm just very much a realist because I was in it for a long time. And I sort of I know that how far the other side of the coin is with men, right? And some men, you're just never going to change their mind. And the only thing they respect is success and talent. So the better, faster you can just be your own self and be really good at your job and just kind of don't give a fuck about the rest of it, they'll just take that and then they'll leave you alone. Like, honestly, that's so much of it. But, and I don't mean like actual real harm and actual real things that are happening. Obviously there's laws for that. I'm 100% for that. But a lot of it is attitude and energy that I see women, they're just not prepared to, you kind of have to just build a little bit of a tough, you don't have to be an asshole, but you just have to build let stuff not bother you. And there's lots of careers like that, right? Like it's not just construction.
No.
So that's probably not a very popular opinion, but I'm all about just moving up, and I want women to be in positions of power and be the person in charge. And the only way you get to do that is you've got to get there.
Right.
You gotta, that's why I ended up owning my own company and employing 14 women in my cabinet shop, because that has more power than me trying to change some little law on a job site that's going to do what. Like, it's, like, just
right. I mean, you get successful, and then you can make that change that you can make wanted the rules to see yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So that's sort of the take I took. I also just recognize that it's a game that you sort of just have to play, like lots of, if you're a chef, you have to act like other chefs. If you want to be a race car driver, like there's just sort of a culture of certain things. And you have to fit in on some level, right? So that's some of it that I think a lot of women just miss, that there's a culture of construction in like every job, right? If you're a secretary, there's a culture there too. You don't walk in with a beer can and your boots up on the table, and right, that would look weird in a secretarial pool.
Right.
So some of it is just that. So I don't know. It's probably not a very popular opinion, but it's my opinion of what I've seen worked with other women, and all the women that I know that have been very successful. Many of them they're the same way. They're just like, look, it's just a game. It's just a culture. Just do your thing, be good at your thing, keep moving on. Don't let it bother you, unless it's real aggressive. And there's things you can do with that. Like mostly it's just, you just talk back. Like,
right.
That's the thing. You can't be a pansy in the industry. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you can, but you're going to have a hard time.
Right. And I would go out on a limb and almost say though too, like to some degree, I feel like you probably came to this opinion because you you didn't have any like allyship sisterhood to even look to in the industry.
True. Yeah, and that's true. Like if there'd been a couple of other women on the job, it might have been different, but it's really, I know it's interesting to think if I'd had that, what I would have done differently. And I just think there's a range of things that can happen on a job. You know, there's real harm, real somebody holding you back, really somebody really fucking with you. I'm 100% against that. And that's why you want to have allies on the job site so that you that are men, not just women, right? But then there's just a lot that's sort of just that chronic grade, like picking away at you, like, yeah. And I see a lot of women just fall for that. Like they just they can't deal with that. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's just like I try to help the women understand, like, look, you just got to be a little tougher. It's not something that we're kind of taught as girls, right? To be. But if you want to be a race car driver, I guarantee you, you're going to have to like be tough and you're going to have to fit into that culture. The whole culture is not going to change for you, right? Yeah. It does a little bit, but you just got to be smart about it. I mean, there's only 3% women still on job sites. Like, if we want to have massive amounts of women on job sites, like we're just going to have to kind of be a little bit tougher emotionally and just not let stuff bother us as much and just get good at our jobs. And then that stuff really falls away a lot.
So your experience in the industry versus your own business and having 14 women in the cabinet shop, like what was the different culture there? What was?
Oh man, it was so fun. It's still like the best time of my life. So I created my own culture but there was still, like, I would say there's still a toughness there because the job is fucking hard. Like, it's hard to build, at our top, we were building 30 kitchens a month. That's a lot of work and mental stamina, like mental, emotional stamina to make that happen. Lots of clients, lots of systems, lots of things happening, just physically, mentally, psychologically. There's a lot going on to make that happen. And you have to be tough to do that. So I had the same thing. Like there was women that just couldn't handle the lifestyle, the culture of that, but we had so much fun. I mean, we just had so much fun. All the women there were tough as far as like just getting the job done, really enjoyed their work. They loved learning, curious, loved cross training, like kind of not stuck in one thing. Even though we all had things that were like, I was really good with finish work. Other girls were better with building cabinets. Other girls were better with rough stuff. Like, so yeah, the culture was kind of, you could creative. Nobody got held back. Like the more you wanted to move up, the more you could. I did something that was kind of unusual where I created kind of everybody that worked there was sort of responsible for sales. I don't know if that makes sense, but because my background was business and marketing, I knew I wanted to do the cabinet shop in a different way than other shops that I had worked in. They typically don't make that much money, right? And because they're run by just, old white fat guys that don't necessarily know that much about business, right? Like it's true. All of my competition, that's who they were. And they do stuff very old school, they're not interested in marketing really. They barely even like their clients, right? They just want to be in the shop all the time. Like it was a very traditional kind of person I was going against. And, from their standpoint, all they did was talk shit about us and like say the girls can't build and their stuff is better. Like that was their marketing strategy. Okay.
Right. It's just that we're better than them.
Yeah. And even though we're all doing it the same way, right? Like how to build cabinets basically been the same for a long time, right? And the finishes and all that stuff, like it's how you design it, it's the experience and all that. So I created this sort of compensation system where everybody, and when I brought somebody on, I sort of trained them on selling, like not hard selling, but just basic selling. Like, what do we do? Who do we serve? How to notice an opportunity? How do you, what is it that we do differently and better than the competition? And for sure, we targeted only women. So we targeted the wife of the house, which was unusual as well. And so all the girls that worked there basically got a commission. So it didn't matter if you did nothing but build face frames all day. It didn't matter if you did nothing but unload the plywood every day. It didn't matter if you drove the forklift in the shop, or you worked in the spray booth, or, you went out and bought our sandwiches. It didn't matter if you worked at that shop, you found a client, you got a 15% commission, period. So every single person there felt like basically they were part of the company, and they were, right. And so just in their daily life, everywhere they were at. So we did things like that. And anybody could just move up and come up with new cool things and invent new kinds of doors. And we did stuff with stained glass. I mean, we just did basically whatever we wanted. It was awesome. Like we just did all kinds of cool stuff. Like we just did whatever we wanted. So yeah.
So why leave that?
Well, so I did that for a long time. And then roughly 10 years ago now, because I keep thinking about COVID because we lost like a whole year there. Somewhere between 8 and 10 years ago, I can't remember exactly. I knew that I wanted to, I knew roughly I wanted to retire around 50. I didn't want to do what I see a lot of people do, which is kind of just like work and drive themselves into the ground, right? It's a very fast pace. It's a lot of physical labor.
Mm-hmm.
We were installing, every single week for years, working almost 7 days a week for a long time. And so I knew I wasn't going to be able to maintain that pace, like literally forever. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to, at that point, like the internet had grown a lot. We still didn't have Facebook or Instagram, but I mean, we had it like on tiny amounts, right? But I could see the direction, and I knew that I wanted to make a bigger impact in the industry for women. And so I came up with this idea to create a carpentry school for women. So in the background, I was sort of doing that. So in the weekends, we started teaching power tools to women, and carpentry, and a little bit of furniture building. And so that just took off. And we really were expecting I mean, I was kind of expecting to just do like once a month, right? Yeah. Like, oh, this will be a fun way to like teach other women in our community, or like all of our clients asked for like, I want to do crown molding, I want to do baseboard. And so originally it was just like our clients, like the women that we had put kitchens in for, right? And they wanted to do something in their office or do something in their kids' room. And, I was kind of tired of, for my rates to put in baseboard in a baby's room, like it was ridiculous, right? I'm like, I have no interest in that. And I'm just like taking advantage of you. Like you're going to pay so much money for just baseboard, right? And for like $50 worth of baseboard. So it kind of just took off, and we ended up having to hire 6 more women and train women just to handle the classes in the weekends. And we even kind of rolled over to where we would only work like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and sometimes teach Friday. I mean, it just was like, it kind of just became like a monster, honestly. Mm-hmm. And this was pre the DIY movement, right? It was kind of where it was before it is like right now, where it's like everywhere. Because there was no Instagram. So you still didn't know what was going on, right? And so as part of that process, it occurred to me that maybe I should be doing something even bigger than that, because that was still just Northern California, right? People would come drive a couple of hours to come and see us. So that's when I got the idea to transfer my stuff to the online world and maybe think about, well, could I package these classes, do this in an online forum, and how would I do that? And so that took quite a few years of me learning a whole new set of skills. And in that sort of in between that messy process, right? Because I didn't quite know where it was going. I came up with the idea to do the podcast as maybe a way of sharing stories of other women. And then it sort of morphed into, for a while, I wanted to do a movie. I could never get the movie thing to get off the ground. I was just sort of playing with a lot of things. And so I realized that originally I wanted to be able to do them all at the same time because I really loved my shop. Really loved my shop. And I'd worked really hard to get it. It was like the perfect space, like everything was perfect, right? But I just realized I was gonna have to give up something to get to this next level, right? And it's just kind of how it always is. You got to let go of one boat to reach the next boat. And so I finally just tried for about 3 years to do run the shop, start the podcast, be doing the classes, kind of try to figure out how to do that. And it just got to a point where, the girls, all of us, and sorry, I call all women girls, just as an affectionate term for me.
I got it. Yeah, you're good.
Some people hate that word, but like, I just call you a girl because I like you. Yeah. And so I got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm just going to have to put my big girl pants on and make this decision. Like, I'm going to have to give up something. I'm either going to just keep the shop and not be able to do all these things because you can't be in front of a computer. You just can't do anything at the shop. So I finally came to that very hard conclusion. And so then it took about 2 or 3 years to actually shut it down. So and there's like lots of gradients in between. We started reducing the classes in the workshop. We sold a bunch of equipment. We stopped doing specialty stuff. We did a lot of vanities, entertainment centers, and, kind of custom home offices. We stopped doing all that. We only did a certain kind of core kind of kitchen that was like the simplest, easiest bread and butter for us. We stopped doing large scale, we stopped working for builders because we used to do, huge whole housing developments. We stopped doing that. We stopped working for interior designers and luxury homes, right? We just kept whittling it down. And then we found jobs for all the women, right? We were down to, then there was like a year where I was thinking, well, just sell the business, right? That was a catastrophe. It was just, no one could really step in and do what I was doing. And it just, so.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that if there had been any interest from like the women who worked at the shop to even carry it forward.
That was what I was really hoping was going to happen, but it just, they didn't have the business background like I did. Many of them had kids, like the time requirements. I didn't have little kids. It would have taken. It just needed like someone like me to basically step in and keep all those plates in the air. And we did try with 2 of the ladies really, really hard to make it work. And it just would have been so hard on them. Like they wouldn't have been able to really do it. It would have been like a noose around their neck. Right. And so we just, we split some of the profits. I gave some of them, like basically starter money. I'm kind of like a partner, but I'm not, because I'm not taking any money. I just basically helped them set up their own shops, gave them some of the equipment, gave them some of the, the clients and stuff. And one of the girls is still working. She kept the shop. And so that's been, a couple years. One of the other girl was just like, wow, this is just so hard to do. And she had kids, she had little kids. And so if I couldn't have done it if I'd had little kids. Well, it just, you need a really strong support system. Her husband wasn't super into it. And like,
Yes.
So then I just ended up being the last person there. And so then for about a year, almost a year, I worked there just by myself. And it was back to the beginning. Back to the beginning. And then the last day was when I had to not renew my lease. That was oh man, I cried so hard. It took about, I think the whole first year after I actually shut down the door, that whole year was like, oh man, I grieved so hard for that. Now it's been 2 years. So the first year was really tough because I just love that shop like a person. So I get it. I still miss her.
I think that's why I hold like a death grip on like my creative business, it's like currently I break even. That's about where I'm at with my expenses. Though granted, I don't put a lot of time and effort behind it like I used to, but still it's like, if I let that go, like I think I would lose a part of me.
It literally, it still feels like that. I mean, I have a little, I'm back to kind of like how I first started when I didn't have a shop, right? And I was growing, and I have a shop at my house, right? And it's literally like how I first got started. I built my first kitchen in my garage at my house before I had a shop, before I hired anybody, before any of that. And you can do a lot of stuff at your garage shop, right? So it's kind of funny. Even my husband was like, oh, this is literally like deja vu. This is like when you started. but you're older. I'm like, but it still gives me the same sense. It's not as fun as driving to my shop and opening the doors and like, oh, it's just a beautiful thing. I hope every woman gets to experience something like that.
Yeah.
So
I want to touch on something about like when you like were starting the school. I think like obviously it sounds like you didn't really have to sell it because you're working with this crew of women who are making, which just like the existence of you sells it because women are like, they're doing it. I can do it.
Yeah. No, it literally was like, it spread like a freaking wildfire. Like we did our first, it started with a course I still have, how to use a cordless drill, right? And it started with that. And then I did the chop saw, and they were all just scared to death of the chop saw, just the sound of it. And by the end of that weekend, I think I sold it for like $99 for 2 days, which is ridiculous, right? That's way too cheap. But I didn't know, I wasn't sure. And so they were there for 2 full days, and we couldn't get them out of the shop. I mean, I'm not kidding. It was like Sunday night. It was summertime. And so it's super sunny here, right? So it's like sunny till like 9 o'clock at night or something. I don't know.
Yep.
And so it's like, I'm exhausted. I've been talking, and I'm an introvert. So like, you can't tell because I like you and I'm talking about this subject, but generally I'm not talking. And I'd been talking like straight for 2 days with like 20 excited women, right? And oh my God. And so I was just absolutely wiped out on Sunday, and it was like 4 o'clock. I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's wrap it up. Everybody's going home. You must be tired. And I couldn't get them out of the shop. And they're talking in the parking lot, right? I can hear them. They're outside in the parking lot, and they're all just talking about this. I mean, they're just like floating on cloud 9. They were so fucking excited. I cannot tell you. And so I was just like, wow, I have something here. I have something here. And so then of course they told all their friends, neighbors, sisters, everybody. And we had, twice as many signups and twice as many signups and twice as many signups. I mean, it just kept blossoming. And I think about like, what would have happened if I'd had Instagram then? Because, it would have been nuts. But we did. I mean, I kind of lost track, but I know we're around 8,000 women we did.
Wow.
And that's just all. No, that's not a nonprofit, just privately funded. I mean, we just bought the tools and paid the girls to come in who love doing it, because it's women teaching other women. So they listen, they pay attention, they do what you ask them to do. So it's like fun teaching, right? We did have about a year where we did co-ed, and then we just stopped that. We just couldn't take it. Sorry, men. We love men. Hey, I love my husband. I love my brother-in-law. Like, we're not anti-men, but they don't listen. And, they're coming to a beginner's level class, and then they act like they know what they're doing. But it's like, well, then why are you here? Because you're taking up time for the other women who have said they're beginners. That's why they're here. Right. So after probably like the 20th time that we tell them to, not touch the chop saw, not use the chop saw until we teach you how to do it. And we're going to go through this process. And then the guy just walks over there and just starts cutting wood by himself and messes it up and scares himself. And we're just like, okay, they just don't listen. So we just stopped offering it to men.
Yes.
So there's plenty of places for guys to go. Like they've had their shot, right?
They got their shot.
They got their shot.
Today's episode is brought to you by ToolMomStore.com. Tool Mom and Company is for all ages, genders. They have what you need for your one-stop tool-related merchandise of gifts and clothing. The products are fun, fashionable, one of a kind. In fact, I have 2 of the mugs. One has a circular saw with flames coming off of it. It says "Go Girl." Another one has the definition of a tool chick. Both of them are super awesome, and I have coffee out of them almost every morning. So check out ToolMomStore.com or find them on Instagram at ToolMomBonnie. You can receive an extra 20% off at checkout by using the code MAKERMOM. So let's talk briefly about your podcast. How frequently are you doing your episodes, and like what kind of women, do you generally try to have on your podcast?
Yeah, so I'd say it's roughly 2 a month, right? Roughly one a week, one-ish a week, something like that. Kind of depends if I'm doing stuff in the background. Sometimes I'm helping some of the women. I get a lot of calls from women that call or DM and want help with, maybe they're trying to move up in their career, or they're sort of stuck at their job and they have a guy that's being asked to them and they don't know how to work around that, or move up, or transfer to a different job, or someone want to start their own businesses. Some women, so I tend to do a lot of that kind of in the background privately. So I some weeks, like sometimes a week is heavy where I'm sort of helping women with something that's going on their job site or in their woodworking business. And then I have episodes that come out generally around, I'm trying to sort of show a broad range of women in the trades. So, construction, skilled trades, woodworkers. There's a lot of people that already do sort of hobbyist and crafty stuff. And that's great, right? There's lots of people doing that. And I, not that I haven't had that on the show, but I really sort of try to push the envelope of showing what's possible as a career, right? Is sort of what I'm going for. But I love them all. I love anything to do with wood, literally. It doesn't even have to be wood, metal, glass. Like I love all that stuff. Like if I had come back 30 times, I'd work in 30 different things in the trades, right? I do glass blowing. I love all of that stuff. So the short answer is I'm sort of pick women that I think are going to illustrate something that's not being seen in the industry. So I'm definitely all about inclusivity, diversity. I try really hard to show that on the show, like different kinds of women and different kinds of stages of life, or different kinds of, some women have money, some women don't have money, some women have a lot of education, some women don't, some women are in pretty high level positions, some women are just starting. Like I kind of try to show a range. I don't know if that comes across, but that's what I'm trying to do. And then just I also really love to hear from women who don't get heard from. That's really the kind of gold mine I'm looking for. It's like someone that I kind of discover that no one else really knows about, that doesn't have a huge Instagram following, that's not an influencer, that's, I kind of, those are sort of my sweet spot. I love highlighting someone that maybe gets passed over. And so I'm open to anybody. I love sharing all those stories. And then the other angle that we're going to pursue more of, which I have some interviews, I just haven't released them yet, is I really like talking about the financial side more, because I don't think it gets talked about enough. And a lot of women don't make as much money as they could make in the trades. And so I kind of, because I've seen I've seen both sides of the coin. I've been in the trades. I've been as a union carpenter. I've been as a non-union carpenter. I've built my own business privately. I kind of know the range of money that people can make, right? And so I'd like to have more conversations, more open conversations around what women actually make in the trades. So that'll be some of the angles of the interviews coming up, will be how much money you actually can make. Because I think a lot of people don't realize how much money a lot of women make in the trades, and just how financially independent you can be, which is a really big selling point for me, that I don't think it doesn't really get talked about very much. And that's the thing I really think needs to change in the conversation overall.
Yeah.
Which is different than like woodworkers, right? Which is maybe a small business and you're just sort of supporting yourself. Like it's not, but I just wish the industry, I wish more people understood, more women understood just how financially independent they could be working in the construction trades, how much actual opportunity there is.
Yeah, I've got an interview that's going to be released this month around a woman who teaches other women to weld and get into industry that way, and primarily to build independence, wealth
Yeah.
independence. So yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of, I think there's definitely a need for more of that, like education and
Right.
programming as well.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, for me, like, I mean, we grew up poor, like poor
Mm-hmm.
white trash, whatever you want to call it. We didn't have a ton of money, but I still had more opportunities than other people did. Right. And I kind of created opportunities for myself that then gave me more chances later. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people don't know how to do that. And a lot of people don't even have the rubbing sticks to rub together
Right.
to even get to that point. And I just really feel like there's so many women that don't even know what they could do if they just got into this world.
Mm-hmm.
They could completely revolutionize their little neighborhoods, their little families, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they just don't know how viable it is. So that's sort
Mm-hmm.
of the thing I'd like to get across, is just maybe some of the women who are in really poor areas, how transformative it would be to have a career in the trades.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's not going out on a limb to say, like, you're an ambitious as hell person. So
That was funny. I wasn't sure what direction you were going with that. No, that's not going out on a limb. Yeah.
So what do
Especially
you?
around this topic.
Yeah. What do
Around
you
women,
see as
like female empowerment, women empowerment,
Yeah.
financial independence for women. Yes, I'm very ambitious when it comes to that. Yeah, that's my thing.
So how do you see? I mean, you talked about like the grief of giving up your shop and stuff to go after this next kind of like the next big thing. What, like, if you could summarize, what is that next big thing?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of still noodling that. I'm thinking through what that could be, but I wouldn't put it past me to get into the political arena, to maybe even not in a public way, but just create legislation or something that really, I think the construction industry has a marketing problem. And as a person that does marketing, they have a marketing messaging problem. Their message is not actually getting across to the people that really need to hear it. So that's generally the parents, and the parents want to know that their girls are going to be financially independent. And that message has not gotten across, right? So I'm playing with some things around that. I'm playing with maybe a Netflix series. I'm playing with some different, I don't know, things that I need to learn, things that I need to grow into to be bigger, or to make the message have a bigger impact, right? So I'm kind of looking for that, not sure myself, like the next little learning phase for myself. Obviously the podcast, still growing that. And still working in the background with helping women add to their businesses they have, or create courses like I have, online courses to make more passive income. Like I still feel like that's a big area that I can help with, because when you have more money, you have more choices and you can do more things and help other women, right? So those are kind of the direction.
Excellent. I loved all those words you just said.
Yeah, and I actually have a documentary movie / podcast. I'm not exactly sure what form it's going to take, but I do want to working with a producer, a friend of mine, who we're sort of jointly crafting this story around a tragic story that actually happened to a female carpenter here that got killed on a job site. And so I know that sounds like a downer, but that's one way of sort of getting the message out about harassment and things that can happen on a job site, and bring that to light. So that's sort of like another angle. So I'm just looking at ways of producing and publishing these stories and getting them in front of the people that actually help the girls make the choice whether to enter the trades or not, and at least just show it to the girls that are interested, right? It's not for everybody, but there's a heck of a lot of people that are pouring into the industry right now, women wise. So I just want to be part of that next revolution, that next wave, to get it from, 3% to like 40%. That's my goal.
And I think
on job site, not in the
yes,
office.
Yes.
Like doing the thing.
Yep.
So,
and you know what? I think it's coming. Like there are so many of, I'm going to say us women in the sphere of like trying to like stir the pot and push women forward. Like so many of us that I've just met, through my podcast, like doing some amazing things. And it's like, I just feel like that tipping point is coming. Like
it's coming. Yeah, no, I absolutely do. I mean, especially with, Instagram 3 years ago, that whole thing really is a very recent thing. And so that's just like adding gasoline onto the fire that was kind of already there. It's been stoked for a long time, right? And there was people doing stuff long before I even got the idea 10 years ago, right? There was women in the background longer than I was doing it. So there's a whole bunch of us that are like building this wave that's going to crest. And I just want to make sure that it's not just hobbyists and craft stuff, that it's actual women on job sites, designing and engineering the building and swinging the hammer and in charge of the whole thing, but doing the, like, that's sort of my angle, is the actual physical work that's getting done. I want to make sure that still is seen as a really viable, exciting, fun career for people to have, for women to have.
I mean, it's absolutely true, both in trade and in like manufacturing. There is a huge shortage of like workers, and so it's like we're gonna have to have women. Or what?
Yeah, they're half the population.
Yeah.
I'm excited about like sort of what's to come, and that's just like traditional construction. That's not even. There's so many really sophisticated, electronics, and there's just incredible stuff in manufacturing and robots, and and that's all sort of part of STEM, right?
Right.
That's like a whole nother thing that I'm not even talking about. Like there should be so many women in that. I'm just talking about like actually on the job sites.
Yep. Which to me overlaps with like my day job. I'm going into like manufacturers who are, machining parts.
Right.
Yep. And if it's 3% women, I would be shocked. And it's, especially like running CNCs, like, it doesn't have to be a man. Like that machine doesn't know what gender parts you have.
Right. Yeah. I'm really hoping that, sort of one of my messages that I'm sort of trying to noodle with and figure out is I really want women to, what I'm really trying to get is that women, I think, bring a unique perspective to job sites. And they're really, instead of being a hindrance, they're really like they give you a strong competitive advantage. I've seen this happen over and over and over again, that when a company hires women on a job site, like, and they're really allowed to blend in and kind of bring their thing to the job, like it really helps the job site. They're better with clients. They help with like relations, so people aren't fighting as much. Like there's so many things that sort of just happen innately by a woman being there, who's pulling her own weight and doing her thing. So I'm hoping to like help people see that she's actually a benefit to the job site. So you want to have that on your job site, not the opposite. Like, oh God, we have another girl here. Like, that whole mentality is what I'm trying to. And I know employers that get it, and they actually see it as, oh wow, that's like one of our strongest resources we have. Having Sarah here and Teresa here. There's a company I can think of off the top of my head, Baker Roofing. They have made it, they're on Instagram. I think they're out of Raleigh, North Carolina, but they've basically, from a selling standpoint and a marketing standpoint, they're like, oh my God, like we have way more business having women here. And so they've actually go out of their way to have women on their job sites, because it actually is better for their company, right? It's the opposite of what most people think. And again, those women are still building the roofs and doing the work, right? Like they have to do their job. But that's what I'm hoping at some point people will start to see in the industry, that it's not just we have to have this percentage of girls
Right.
on the job site to do because of this law or whatever. They're like, no, we want to have those women here because we make more money. We do this, we do that, right?
Yep.
So that's sort of one of the angles I'm playing with, because I've seen it in real life, like actually happen.
Yeah.
So,
well, we're like at the end of our time together, though I do feel like we could talk like for a lot more. But
I know I can be pretty chatty when I like a subject matter.
Yeah, same here. But I want to give you a chance to let people know how they can find you and follow along with all the gazillion things that you're going after.
Yeah, so they can. The easiest way is to just go to the Remodel Your Life Podcast on Instagram and DM me. So it's spelled all the way out, Remodel Your Life Podcast. And they can DM me, and they can always give me a call. Like I'm around for women if they need help on a job site, or they want someone to talk to, or they need to brainstorm, or they want to leave a job site and go to the next job site. Like, how do you do that? So they can call 707-592-7169. That's my cell. And I'm retired. I'm here to serve. I'm here to help these women do better in whatever they're trying to do. So, that's, take advantage of it.
Yeah. Thanks, Camille, for chatting with me today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. So again, that was Camille, and I will include the links on how you can follow along with her and get in touch with her at the in the podcast notes for today's episode. So you can find that in the description on your podcast app, or if you're watching this on YouTube, check the description down below there as well. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure that you are subscribed and tell a friend about the podcast and how much you're enjoying it, and maybe even who are a few of your favorite makers that you've gotten to know from listening to the podcast. Reminder, because it's coming up this Saturday, so Saturday the 15th, there will be a virtual hangout for anybody who is a patron over on Patreon. So it will be at 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you are a patron, I'll be sending out that link for you to hop on the Zoom so we can have a virtual hangout on a weekend. So hopefully all of you can participate, and look forward to seeing you all there and hanging out. If you're not yet a patron and you want to become one, especially so you can hop out and hang out with all those people I mentioned at the start of the podcast, then I have recently made it really super easy for you. Follow along with the podcast over on Instagram at Wonder Women Pod, and women is with an EN, not an AN. Wonder Women Pod. Link in the bio, and that very top button allows you to become a patron, and then you'll have access to this virtual hangout and all the ones coming up in the future, and anything else that I throw out there. Occasionally I'll do a live interview, and you'll get access to hop on the Zoom when those interviews are happening. So if this sounds like something you want to partake in, if you want to hang out with Kevin and Christy and Christina and Jeremy and Sammy and Sven and Rachel and Bonnie and Laura and Mary Lou, Amy, Dan Kelly, Brandy, Kathy, Ellen, or Ethan, assuming they'll all be there at the hangout, then you want to make sure that you're a patron to make that happen. All right. When I am not interviewing fabulous makers and making podcast episodes, you can find me designing and making furniture and other home decor at freemanfurnishings.com and at Freeman Furnishings pretty much across all of social media. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Pinterest, all of it, Freeman Furnishings. I'm active daily, though, on Instagram and TikTok. So if you want to see what crazy new project I am up to or my latest dance moves in the shop, then check out Instagram and TikTok. Let me know you found me through the podcast. I love hearing that. It's Wednesday. I hope you're all having a fantastic week so far. I hope you've had time to get out into the shop and make something. And I will see you all on Friday with a brand new episode.
Wonder Woman, now the world is ready.